Okay, well, let's pick up with hypnosis and talk about some of the things that we know about hypnosis. Now, one of the things that makes hypnosis different from sleep and dreaming is that whereas everybody falls asleep and everybody dreams every night, whether you remember it or not, your brain goes through a dream stage, not everyone can be hypnotized. So it makes it seem like hypnosis might be something different from sleep and dreaming as far as a variation on consciousness. If it was if it was just a change in brain waves or a change in consciousness, then we would expect everybody to be equally hypnotizable. But some people can be hypnotized and other people cannot be hypnotized. Let's talk about some of the characteristics of hypnotizable people. It turns out that people who can be hypnotized tend to be the same kinds of people who get easily absorbed in imaginative activities. If you're the sort of person who goes into a movie, gets swept away with the plot and the characters, maybe you're crying along with them or laughing with them, you come back out of the theater and you're surprised to see how much time has passed. If you've had those experiences frequently with movies or with books or just daydreaming and not realizing how much time has passed, it suggests that you might be hypnotizable. The other thing is that if you are a person who can focus on fantasy activities and lose yourself in those activities, you're probably more hypnotizable. The key thing in both of these characteristics is that you have that ability to get swept up with what's going on. That's not necessarily the here and the now. Sometimes people hear these characteristics and think that it makes it sound like hypnotizable people are maybe more gullible, maybe more likely to make things up, something like that. That's not what these characteristics are about at all. This is actually about people who have really good imaginations, are really just able to get absorbed in things. So that's what we know about people who are more hypnotizable. 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, Freud thought that everybody would be hypnotizable and that would be his royal road to the unconscious. But then he discovered pretty quickly that some people could be hypnotized and some people couldn't, and so he had to figure out other avenues to get at the unconscious, and we'll talk about that more in the chapter on personality. What can hypnosis do and what can't hypnosis do? Well, one thing that time and time again research has shown is that you can use hypnosis to block your awareness of pain. You'll notice I carefully phrase that in my little table here. It blocks your awareness of pain. It doesn't remove your experience of pain at all. Early studies of this question were designed where they said, I'm going to hypnotize you. You're not going to feel any pain during this dental procedure where we're performing a root canal. You're not going to feel any pain, and when I wake you up, you're not going to have felt any pain. And that's basically what happened. People that were hypnotizable, who underwent the dental procedures, when they woke up, they reported that they didn't experience any pain during the procedure. But subsequent research was designed a little bit more carefully. What they did in the later studies was they told the person, you're not going to feel any pain, but if you do, I want you to tap on your leg. What they found in that scenario was even though 100% of those participants woke up and reported not having felt any pain during the procedure, 100% of them tapped their leg during the procedure. So it implies that they experienced the pain while they were under hypnosis, but once they were brought back into regular consciousness, they didn't remember having felt the pain. So they're not aware that they're having the pain. When I was having my children, I was too scared to get like an epidural or something. I was afraid I'd get paralyzed. I don't know. It's all really quite crazy. But anyway, long story short, I ended up having both kids without any painkillers. And the first child in particular really surprised me because I didn't know I knew how to hypnotize myself. And that's when I discovered apparently I can. And what's really funny is that because I wasn't doing some kind of elaborate hypnosis thing, because I don't know how, I can still reflect and I know for sure what I experienced. And I can tell you what my experience was, is that I was like observing myself from a third person perspective. So I was like up in the corner watching myself have a baby. And I was thinking, man, that looks like it hurts, but I don't remember consciously feeling like it was me who was in pain. And I don't know if that's what all hypnotized people's experience would be like, but I know for me, I didn't feel like I owned the pain. Hypnosis can reduce obesity, anxiety, and hypertension. There have been studies that have shown that people who use hypnosis to help them to engage in activities that help them to cope with these problems tend to do better than people who haven't had hypnosis. So hypnosis for obesity, for example, gives you a post-hypnotic suggestion that whenever you feel a hunger craving, that instead of eating, you're going to wait 30 seconds and you're going to turn on your favorite music, or you're going to dance, or you're going to do something, and you're going to feel compelled to do it, and you have to do it before you can, satisfy your hunger. Well, that's all very convenient, because if you can get a person to do something for 30 seconds instead of acting on their impulse to eat, the urge tends to pass anyway. So the trick with hypnosis working for obesity may have to do with getting the person to distract themselves for 30 seconds instead of indulging their craving. With the anxiety and the hypertension, both of them have to do with sort of a biofeedback mechanism where you're learning to control your own internal states by being acutely aware of your internal states. So it may not be some kind of magical hypnotic post-hypnotic suggestion, but instead it may have more to do with coping mechanisms that the person's more open to because they think that they've been sort of programmed to do it. Hypnosis, while you are under hypnosis, you can display greater concentration and performance. So it kind of implies that it's focusing your brain activity on what you choose to focus on. Just like you can choose not to pay attention to the pain, thanks to hypnosis, you can choose to put your attention on whatever task you're trying to perform or concentrate on. What it can't do is work without your intent. So there's no way that a hypnotist could turn you into an automaton who has to do what the hypnotist said. You have to want it to work. And so if you go get hypnotized for obesity and they tell you to dance whenever you feel a craving and you just really don't want to, you'd rather indulge your cravings, the hypnosis isn't going to work. You have to want it to work. It can't give you some kind of superhuman ability or extra strength or anything like that. It doesn't give you anything that you wouldn't have in your normal waking state. It seems, like I said before, on the can side, it seems to help you to focus your energy on those things that you've been, trying to focus on. It doesn't give you superhuman strength. It doesn't give you superhuman concentration. It just sharpens things. It cannot boost accurate recall of forgotten events. No matter what my soap operas that I used to watch when I was in college would like us to believe. If you have forgotten something, if you really didn't know it, being hypnotized is not going to bring it back. That's kind of a throwback to Freud, the idea that you've got stuff in your unconscious that was too painful to remember. So how are we going to get something out of your unconscious? We're going to use hypnosis to retrieve that information out of your unconscious. Well, modern research on memory shows us that if you don't have access to it consciously, you probably don't have access to it at all. It's probably not stored. You probably never fully encoded it. So yeah, no, and in research that has examined those people who have claimed to recall something under hypnosis that they hadn't been able to recall in their normal state, a lot of times the things that they've recalled are not necessarily accurate. In the olden days, probably 30 or 40 years ago, police departments would bring hypnotists in to hypnotize witnesses and try and elicit more details about the perpetrator or the crime or whatever. When they analyzed those hypnosis sessions, they discovered that the questioner would oftentimes provide leading questions that would elicit answers that weren't necessarily accurate, but that fit the questioner's predisposed beliefs about who was probably the criminal or how the crime probably went. Now, what do I mean by leading questions? The questioner might ask the hypnotized witness something like, was he taller or shorter than 6 feet? Now, that doesn't sound like the world's most leading question, right? It just sounds like I'm asking about his height. But when you ask with an anchor, is he taller or shorter than 6 feet? 6 feet becomes the anchor point that the person who's trying to recall memories will use to help themselves generate an answer. So even though the perpetrator might have been 5'6", because the questioner asked, is he taller or shorter than 6 feet, the witness might say, well, he's shorter, I'd say 5'10". Now, they're right, he was shorter, but they don't really know how tall he was. They don't remember. Maybe they didn't have any markers in the environment that give them a good measure of how tall the person was. And so they're basically guessing. But having been given an anchor of 6 feet, the person's going to give an answer that's closer to 6 feet than it would have been if you hadn't given them the anchor. If you had strictly asked a non-leading question like, how tall was he, you might have gotten, I don't know. Or if they did actually know, they might have said something closer to 5'6", right? So the idea is that sometimes we feed the answers to the hypnotized person and don't even realize that we fed it to them. The questioners in these videotapes that were reviewed they swore up and down, I did not ask any leading questions. What are you talking about? And then when they were told that's considered a leading question, they were like, oh, well then yeah, I guess I do ask a lot of leading questions. So hypnosis can do certain kinds of things in limited contexts. It can't do a lot of the magical things that people think it can. Okay, so what is hypnosis? What are we talking about? Well, again, with the dissatisfying, I've got more than one theory to tell you about. Okay, so here we have a woman who is hypnotized, and she's sniffing a bottle of ammonia. And the hypnotist tells her it smells like a rose. So she's able to smell that bottle of ammonia without recoiling from it, like any regular non-hypnotized person would do. If you've ever had the pleasure of smelling ammonia, you recoil from ammonia. It's actually what they put in smelling salts for trying to wake somebody up from unconsciousness. So she's smelling something most of us would recoil from, and she's sniffing it as though it smells good. How is that working? Well, one theory, the divided consciousness theory, says that hypnosis actually causes a split in your awareness so that you are able to focus on those parts of the environment that you choose to focus on and ignore other parts and instead substitute what's going on in your own head. So because the hypnotist told her that it smells like a rose, she's able to selectively inattend, ignore this actual smell, and instead substitute the smell that the hypnotist suggested, the rose. So we divide our consciousness and we only are aware of those parts of the environment that we choose to be aware of. The social influence theory says that she's so caught up in playing the role of a hypnotized person that she literally just ignores the odor altogether. She's just doing what she was told to do and going along with the scenario. The social influence theory does a really good job of explaining if you've ever seen a hypnotist show. A lot of my students report that that's something that happens at grad night or whatever at their school. When I was in 8th grade, we had a hypnotist come to our school. I didn't get picked. And then when I was at the Puyallup Fair, I didn't get picked. I don't know if I just have a look of you're probably not hypnotizable or what, but I never get picked. I think I'd be hypnotizable. I think I hypnotized myself, so I think I would be, but I never get picked. But the idea with stage shows is that once you're up on the stage, you get swept up with the social setting, right? The role that you're playing of hypnotized person, that you ignore, other things that are going on in the environment, like your normal inhibitions that would tell you not to do these things. You kind of ignore those things, and you get swept up with what the rest of the group's doing. I wanted to mention, a lot of times when you have stage shows, you have a suggestion like, you're going to do a striptease. I saw a stage show once that had a guy who was told he's going to be Satin Doll and he's going to do a strip show. And so they start playing the stripper music and he starts to do his striptease, except for that he doesn't do a striptease. He doesn't even remove a shirt, which, you know, men can do in pretty much any social setting. He didn't do that. Instead, he kind of danced a little bit, not really very much, but he kind of danced a little bit, and then he pulled up his pant leg, like he's showing some leg, right? I mean, what stripper does that? A stripper who's not really a stripper, but is instead a hypnotized person whose normal inhibitions will kick in and prevent them. He tried to go along with the social influence. He tried to go along with what was being suggested within the confines of what he was really willing to do. You don't become an automaton. You do what you're willing to do, even when you are being influenced by the social context of the hypnotist. So, a couple of theories that explain hypnosis. I don't know which one's right. It might be a combination of the two. And then, of course, we have the third theory that is just this generic. It's an altered state of consciousness, and you just enter this altered state. But you'll notice it's not on our model because that's probably not what hypnosis is. Okay, let's go ahead and stop here, and we'll come back and talk about drugs in the next segment.